to start with your original audition, which is on the box set. And if you can take me back, do you remember your audition?
Yeah, absolutely I do. That year I was up for four different pilots. That was pilot season. And I went up for 4 different shows that I remember, all having to do with music, actually. It was in the air. There was one about a surfing band, Beach Boy kind of thing. I don't remember too much about that. Another one about a Peter, Paul, and Mary kind of folk group. That actually did go to pilot. I think it was called The Happeners, but it didn't sell. Another one was like a big, one of those family New Christy Minstrels, Randy Sparks, The Mighty Wind kind of, group. That didn't go to pilot. And then there was the Monkees, and I remember quite clearly going to that first audition, which was just myself. I didn't see the ad. My agent, I had an agent because I'd already had a series.
Yes.
So when, as a kid, circus boy, so one doesn't go to the cattle call audition when one has already had a series, right, darling? So no, I had my first audition in front of the producers, and I remember quite clearly because it was the same building and could have been the same office that I went for my audition for Circus Boy. Wow. 10 years earlier. It was the same company, and I remember walking in, and I got the script. I still have the pilot script. Mm-hmm. It's spelled Monkees with a Y still. Oh. And the characters were, Biff, Bill, Joe, and Frank or something. I don't remember. And I learned my sides, learned the lines, and I went in, and I saw these 2 guys sitting there also in the office in jeans and T-shirts. They weren't much older than I was. Mm-hmm. I thought they were there for the audition, and that was the producers. That was Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider. And the first audition, it was just line reading, scenes off of and they talked and, we goofed around and a little, just banter, as you usually do. And then I read the lines, and I left. But I remember thinking, even at that time, this is really a good one. I'd like to get this. There was something different about it, and it mainly was because, like I say, they weren't much older than I was at the time, and they were into the Beatles and into the 60s and everything. So there was a different vibe about it, definitely, even at that time. And then the auditions went on. I was going to school, as probably many people know. I was studying to be an architect, and if I couldn't make it as an architect, I was going to fall back on show business. And I was in school. I didn't even quit school when I got the pilot. But that's jumping ahead. The audition process was very involved for a TV show. Usually it was just lines, and then maybe a screen test or a reading with some of the other principals. But just script and dialogue, and then either you got a call back or you didn't, and that was it. But of course, since this was a musical show, and clearly they had in mind that they wanted us to be able to sing and play, or they wouldn't have bothered. You had to be able to play an instrument, and you had to be able to sing, and you had to be able to act, all of the different skills. My audition piece, as I tell everybody, was Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry, because I was in a cover band at the time called Mickey and the One-Nighters, because I was at one night. But and Johnny Be Good was one of the songs I used to do in town and around, and cover band stuff. And I remember singing that song. And I remember a little bit about the improv. It was heavily weighted towards improvisation. And I wasn't very good at it, and I'm still not really on demand. I was uncomfortable with it because I was used to having a script and learning the lines. And Mike started out great at it, and he still is. Took me a while to get comfortable doing the improv. And then I remember a little bit about the screen tests, and that was when it got down to about 8. I think. And now we show some of those screen tests on tour and stuff. I don't remember Mike and Peter at all from those screen tests, but I do remember David. We got paired up a few times, and I think it was also because we had a lot in common. We had both been child stars, him on Broadway, me on television. So we had, I guess, kind of that in common and to talk about. We were more familiar with the acting and learning lines and doing shtick, I guess. And that was it. A couple of, I guess, weeks, maybe months, a month later, I was still going to school. My agent called and said, "You got the pilot." And I was like, wow, how cool. But I didn't quit school because I knew that pilots, more often than not, don't sell. So I didn't even quit. I just took 10 days off or whatever it was to shoot the pilot. And I went back to school until they sold the show in New York. And then I quit school.
I think one of the things that's great that it, again, leaps out to me even at the audition is each distinct personality that you have, and they never seem to change you, only enhance what your natural gifts were. Did you feel that?
Absolutely, and looking back now as having produced and directed and created shows and cast them myself, it's clear that they were looking for, that kind of je ne sais quoi, the kind of thing you do when you're casting a film or television. You're looking for compatible personalities that don't step on each other's toes and have different qualities, that have that chemistry, between them, but also that people can really identify and say, oh, that's definitely. And very quickly, as soon as we started filming, it clicked like that comedically. And that was not, I don't think, just by happenstance. I think that was part of the producer's, brief. I mean, that's what they were looking for. And right from the get-go, I remember we would get a script and start reading it and doing the scene, and then automatically we'd go, no, Davey wouldn't say that. That's a Mickey line. Or no, Mike, you should do that. Great. We immediately fell into this kind of, I don't know what the word, rhythm, I guess, a comedic rhythm, which I think has a lot to do with why the comedy works so well. Besides, of course, the incredible writing. Where's my friend Dave Evans? There he is. Dave. You're going to see an episode that we wrote later on, The Photoscaper. I'm afraid I have to leave pretty soon to catch an airplane back east, but that was a lot of fun doing that episode. Boy, still don't know what it's about, but maybe you can tell me.
And where did you shoot the show?
At Screen Gems. Now it's not called that. It's I don't know what it's called now. It's a Sunset Gower. It was Columbia Motion Picture Company for decades, and then Screen Gems Television, and then they bought the street between the two sides of the lot and put a gate up. And in fact, I remember when I went back when I got the pilot and I went back to show up on the lot to start filming, I went through the guard gate, and it was the same guard that had been there when I was circus boy 10 years earlier. And he said, "Hey, Mickey Braddock, you're back." Good one. So I knew everybody on the lot. The cameraman, Irving Lipman, had been a still photographer on Circus Boy. And,
wow.
The school teacher that had taught me when I was a kid on the set was still there at the studio. So we shot the interiors, the Monkee set, the Malibu beach house,
right.
Which always begs the question is, how could we afford a Malibu beach house when we never worked? How did that happen? I suspend the disbelief. But then the exteriors were mostly done on Columbia Ranch down there at on Pass Avenue by, in Burbank there, which used to be a lot bigger. And I shot Circus Boy there too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and across the street where the apartments are now was the tent, the big Circus Boy tent in the middle of the valley. And that's where 90% of it. We didn't do too much location stuff. The beach occasionally, but most of the stuff was at Columbia Ranch or at Sunset Gower.
And did you get a sense how quickly, when you were shooting, you shot 32 episodes the first year?
No, I think 26 a year. I'm not sure. Andrew would know.
Oh.
But back then, it was typical for a series to get 26.
Mm-hmm.
You get an order for 26. So even though we only shot for 2 years, the equivalent now would be 4 or 5 years, right?
Definitely.
Because now it's 8, 10, 12 if you're lucky or something like that.
And how quickly did you sense that the show was going to be big? Almost immediately, or?
I remember exactly when it happened. We were filming from the summer, night and day, 5 days a week, 8, 10 hours a day, then going to the studio, and I would often do a couple of lead vocals every a night, 2 or 3 lead vocals a night, and then started rehearsing for touring on the weekend. So very little exposure outside of our little, nucleus, and you're kind of in the eye of a hurricane at that time, and we were very cosseted. But also back then there wasn't nearly the kind of social media and the paparazzi and the stuff, and people couldn't find you. So it was 6 o'clock in the morning, get on the set, come back home, go to sleep, back and forth to the studio, to set, back, recording. And, also in Hollywood, you're a little bit of furniture as a celebrity anyway. So, but mainly it was just, there just wasn't any interaction socially with anybody at the time. But the show went on the air in September 12th, and we were all excited. We knew the record had gone to #1, and they kept telling us the show is doing really well, getting good ratings. But no interaction, like I say, with fans or the public until Christmas, when we got a week off, a hiatus for a week for Christmas. And my family had moved up to San Jose, so I jumped in my car to drive down to my local mall, Fashion Square in the San Fernando Valley. Yeah, there you go. Which I've been shopping at since I was a kid. And I jumped in my car with my Christmas list for my family, and I drive in. I've told this story many times. I'm sure many of you have heard it before, but it's honest to God's truth. And I pulled up in my car, and I got out with my list, and I go in through the big glass doors, and all of a sudden, I see people running at me screaming, and I thought it was a fire. And I'm holding the door open, going, "Slow down! Don't panic! Don't run! This way!" And all of a sudden I realized they were running at me and screaming, all these kids and people, and I had to go back to my car, get in my car, and go home. I was really pissed off. I got my stand-in to go down and do my shopping for me.
Wow. I wanted to ask you a couple of film questions. I mean, for me, one of the reasons that the show really holds up is the comedy, and each member has their own particular brand of comedy. And did you watch source material beforehand? Any films, Marx Brothers?
Absolutely. It was
Jerry
mostly
Lewis?
Marx Brothers.
There's a kind of a Jerry Lewis vibe.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was always a huge Jerry Lewis fan, and Danny Kaye, and Donald O'Connor. And they were clearly looking, like we said before, for distinct comedic types. They weren't trying to say, you're going to be Jerry Lewis.
Right.
But they wanted the wacky, and then Mike was that kind of wry, Will Rogers kind of thing. Peter was, I don't know, what would you say, like Harpo or Hunts Hall or something, and Davey was the cute little English heartthrob. And so they clearly were looking, not to fill those roles, but to find people that sort of became those, kind of characters. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
We were talking about comedy and
Oh, yeah,
sports
so
comedy.
we screened, I remember them screening Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and very specifically, they did not screen Three Stooges. I remember them discussing it and saying, we don't want it to go there. You guys are never going to hit each other, never going to, make fun of each other. This episode with Julie Newmar was the closest we ever got to having any kind of a jealousy kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
It was all one for all for one, a camaraderie thing. But yeah, the Marx Brothers, it was heavily weighted toward that. In fact, of course, as we know, John Lennon was the first one to say in an interview, I like the Monkees, I like the Marx Brothers. And we were ultimately much more the Marx Brothers than the Beatles. It was a half-hour little Marx Brothers musical movie on television, like an old Day at the Races.
Yeah, touch of the Monty Python too, with wearing women's clothing. Is that fun?
Yeah, but I don't think at the time we'd seen any Monty Python.
No, but that was Peter Sellers.
Again, the old Hollywood movies would do that all the time, or the Marx Brothers would do that all the time, and we thought nothing of it. Now you probably couldn't get away with it. You'd probably be, politically incorrect if you tried to pull that off.
One thing that always strikes me about the show is there's about 1,000 costume changes.
Yeah.
There must have. Did you just have who was your costume person for every episode?
Well, there was a head costumer named Gene that designed the stuff, but there would have been, wardrobe people on the set all the time. And yeah, we changed costumes a lot. But we had 3 days to shoot a typical episode. And we did them in continuity, start in one and finish and start the next and start the one. So people ask me, which episode do you remember? And it's all the same episode. It's 52 half hours, so 25-hour episode from my point of view. But I remember people distinctly. I remember Julie Newmar. I remember Stan Freberg, because I was a huge Stan Freberg fan from history of the United States, way before the Monkees. And Rose Marie, I remember, and I remember, Severn Darden, incredible actors that would come on, and Hans Conried, who was a wonderful actor, and all these incredible, I remember them, and some of the people that, of course, the crew and the people on the set. But just speaking briefly to your comment about the comedy, the producers, again, it wasn't just, I don't think, a coincidence and happenstance that the show, I don't know if they actually had a brief. I suppose they did. Dave, you could tell me, they probably had some sort of Bible or something like that. But the comedy was not topical, and it wasn't satirical. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why it stands up, over decades, is whereas a show, say, like Laughing, which is a wonderful show, great show, but you had to watch the news that week to get the references. Right. And there was very little of that, none in the Monkees. It was not topical. It played anytime, like Marx Brothers, nor satirical. It didn't go there. So it's still, to some degree, it's pretty silly stuff, but written for 14-year-olds, basically. But worked on a couple of different levels, I think, at times. The episode you're going to see, The Devil and Peter Tork, is a great one because it's, of course, ripping off Faust, as so many people have. Damn monkeys. And there's a great scene, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but you'll see it. Peter sells his soul to the devil to play the harp. And when we find out, I say, but Peter, in the script, I say, but Peter, you sold your soul to the devil. That means when you die, you'll go to hell. And the network censors, NBC network censors, said you cannot say the word hell on primetime television in 1966. And I believe the producers fought like hell to get it cleared, and they said, "It's Faust!" And they said, "No, can't say that." And so in the episode, I think I say, then you go to that place, if you sell your soul, you'll go to that bleep, or something like that, a place you can't say on network television. And the other thing about the content and the, I don't know, the spine of it, the theme, which I've always thought was so important, is that on the Monkees, we were never successful. Mm-hmm. It was always the struggle for success that I think had a lot to do with the reason that so many kids identified with it around the country and the world, because they were out there in their living rooms and in their basements and garages trying to be the Beatles. And ultimately, that's what the Monkees show was about. It wasn't a band, it was a TV show about a band, an imaginary band, that lived in this imaginary beach house who wanted to be the Beatles. Mm-hmm.
And I love all the B-roll footage, you know, that's used for the songs. So where would you shoot that? Like, how would that be?
Oh, the romps?
Yes, the
romps. We
called
them romps. The term music video didn't exist yet. We would be like, the director would say, "Okay, we're going to shoot the romp now."
Okay.
And it was basically just a way to have something to be seen while you're playing the new song for the episode. And usually it was some kind of chase. Mm-hmm. You know, if there was bad guys, they'd be chasing us or we'd be chasing them. Or it'd be a romantic thing with Davy, you know, running down the beach with a girl. And it was all improvised almost entirely. You know, that sometimes they'd have some kind of an idea, but it'd usually always be using the existing set. Mm-hmm. Or going outside, you know, going to the
like
beach.
When you're driving down the road in the car, is that?
I think I vaguely remember at times they'd say, "We're just going to get some stock footage kind of stuff."
Yeah.
That stuff of the stuff driving down, it's in the valley right down there. That was, I think, done one day at lunch or in between shooting scenes, and they said we need to have stock footage for the credits and for the title sequence and all that stuff,
Yes. And another thing that I wanted to ask about was Bob Rafelson and his, you know, kind of stamp on the Monkees as a film producer. And what was it, you know?
Well, he created the show. Bob, I believe, as far as I understand, was single-handedly, not single-handedly, but the story goes that he had been pitching a show about a folk group for a couple of years, before the Beatles, before the Monkees, like Peter, Paul, and Mary. I think he'd been done like roadie work for some folk group, you know, when he was younger or something. And he thought that a show about a folk group would work. He couldn't sell it, and then the Beatles, of course, come along and the whole hippie pop thing, and rejigged it. Got Paul Mazursky and Larry Tucker involved to write, and Gerald Gardner and Dee Caruso as story editors and stuff. So there was must have been a lot of chefs in that kitchen, and you know, who knows who contributed what and where and when. And you never do. It's always a collaborative thing. And like Bob once said in an interview, when asked, why did it work? He said, "We just caught lightning in a bottle." Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can reduce anything like that in any scientific sense. You can't take apart the Monkees series and say, "Oh, well, it was just the writing, or it was just the Monkees, or it was just Bob," but you can't do that with anything, a movie, a song. Mm-hmm. You can't say, "Oh, that song is really great because there's a G in it." Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that.
But wasn't he just convinced that the show is going to be successful? I had heard a story that he showed Michael Nesmith the film A Face in the Crowd and said, "This is going to be you're going to be an overnight sensation," that he was convinced that the show was going to be successful.
Well, he may have. You know, I think they probably got some pretty, you know, the original pilot did not test well. And the original pilot, I think probably everybody's heard this story too, that first of all, we had a manager. Mm-hmm. and he was the head of a record store, but he was our manager and the father figure, my favorite uncle kind of a person. Because the network, I believe, had said, we don't like the idea. It scares us that these 4 young guys are going to be are young and of this new generation, and they're going to be the masters of their own destiny. You never saw that on television. In fact, the only time you saw long-haired kids on television in 1966, they were being arrested. So the NBC was worried, I've heard, and they wanted to have a manager in there, but it tested very badly. And also, the test came back that they couldn't tell which one of us from the other. It was so fast. It happened so fast they couldn't identify. So Bob took out the manager, or most of them, and put in the auditions, part of our auditions that we'd done. And so the kids could, kind of identify a little bit better.
And he, of course, was then part of Easy Rider. So is it true that the Monkees helped finance the film Easy Rider?
I don't know where they got the financing fund, but I know that they, I suspect, yeah. I mean, I don't know who put up the money for that, but they would have definitely. That's when they started BBS Productions, and after doing the movie Head, and then doing...
which I was just going to get to. So you segued doing the television show into Head, and you shot that also in Los Angeles. And what was that a different? I mean, how did that feel compared to the confines of the television show?
Well, it was a huge difference. If anybody's seen the movie, I mean, it's about as different as you can get. But that was all agreed. I remember them coming to me and saying we want to do a movie, and we'd like to spread our wings a little bit, because it was pretty constrained, under network television. And we want to kind of go and, explore a few different ideas. And rather than make a 90-minute episode of the Monkees, which commercially, of course, would have been much more successful at the time, but then we wouldn't have that weird, quirky movie Head, which I'm quite proud of. I like the work I did in it. But at the time, of course, it did not do very well at all. But now it's like this kind of cult thing. So yeah, we all went away. Jack Nicholson was introduced to us as this young B-movie actor who wanted to write, and we all fell in love with him immediately and just thought he was the greatest guy and so charming and charismatic. And he followed us around for months and came to our houses and hung out, and we went out, and then we all went up to Ojai, actually, and for a weekend, and talked about what we wanted to do, what we didn't want to do, what was funny, what would work, all kinds of stuff. And then he went away and crafted that marvelous script.
We're going to get to questions, and I'm going to bring up Andrew and John Hughes. But my last question before you go is, you've got a hit record out.
Yeah. Thank you. Who would have thunk, huh?
Are you touring? You're going to be at the Pantages?
Yeah, we're on tour.
September?
At the Pantages in September. We're on tour. Just did a gig, where were we? Monterey.
Texas.
Dallas. That's right. We did Access TV a concert in Dallas. Yeah. I leave tonight to go back east, have a gig in Wisconsin, and then I go to do Beatle Week in Liverpool in England. It's going to be fun. Yeah, so we're on tour, and Mike joined us in Monterey, and says he's going to join us in the Pantages. I hope so. But Peter and I are having a great time on the road. We're having just the most fantastic time on tour.
I've seen the show a few times on the road. It's always, very touching. I mean, at the end, everybody's standing, and they've got their lights. And
costs us a lot of money to get them to do that,
But it's just an incredible, I mean, it must be an incredible feeling just 50 years later to just be selling out, you know.
If I had known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. No, it is amazing, and I've always felt very flattered, and I've always felt very blessed. You know, I've been in the business, you know, since I was a kid, and my parents were in the business, so I got sort of a sense of how difficult it is to get any kind of success, and to been blessed twice, you know, with 2 television series, and then, you know, the work I did in England, I'm also very proud of as a film producer and director. But I've just always felt so blessed to have been part of such a wonderful collaboration, and it is. Make no mistake, you know, like I said, you can't reduce this down and say, oh, it was just you or him or this or that. It's everybody, and now we have the most incredible partners in Rhino Records. It's the best relationship we've had with a record company in 50 years. And John Hughes there, thank you, my friend.
Could you see a sitcom with the Monkees living in the Malibu beach house with you now, with grown-up, you and Mike? Peter, would you, at your age? No? Yes?
I don't know. It'd be kind of weird.
3 of you living together? All right. See? I know you have to get on a plane. Do you want, Andrew and John, do you want to come up and help me out with some questions? Andrew Sandoval and John Hughes are the co-producers of the Monkees series. And we're going to take some questions now. Yes? We're going to be...
If you have any technical questions about the restoration, the HD, the high-def thing, or Rhino, or anything, these are the guys to answer your questions.
And I see you right there. Please.
Hi, what is it like to be a part of this? I don't know how much of an impact you realize, or I don't know how much you realize an impact that you've made on people. There's a book out about you guys, Why Do Monkeys Matter? And the author's here, she'd like to make sure that you get a copy of it.
Oh, thank you. I will. Thank you very much. If you want to bring it up, sure. You wrote this? Oh, thank you very much. You're Roseanne Walsh? Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.
Was it difficult to get these great actors involved in the Monkees original? You see the outtake of on set what happens with actors who play the rest of the time?
You that one? Oh boy, that was funny. I felt so bad about that. Well, a lot of the actors got it and went with the flow. It was very, very unusual atmosphere on the set compared to your typical sitcom of that era. It was all very tightly scripted. You learned your lines, you came in, you said your lines, like in Hollywood movies. There's no improvisation, no spontaneity was not encouraged. But with the Monkees, it was almost 180 degrees. Bob and Bert had cast us because of our ability to improvise and that spontaneity, which was also a sign of the times in the zeitgeist of the 60s. And that's clearly what they wanted to capture, but it did present problems. And not just with some of the actors like Hans Conried, but with us and with the producers and directors, because what they did is they created an environment which I always liken to a nuclear fission reactor, where you have this radioactive material that is red hot, but you have to contain it. You got to keep a lid on it in the containment pool, because otherwise it'll burn a hole through the center of the earth. Or if you contain it too much, you put it out. And looking back, I can just see how Jim Frawley, the director, and the directors, and Bob and Bert were constantly trying to juggle between letting us go, and they encouraged us to bounce off the walls. They trained us. Jim Frawley originally was our improv coach. And when we started, before we started filming the series, we were doing improv exercises. And they encouraged us to literally come in and, what do you guys want to do? What do you got? You know, what do you got? When there was another actor in doing a scene, we tried to tone it down and do the dialogue because they had learned their lines. But that one day on the set with Han Conried, I remember it, and I don't know why, but we were literally bouncing off the walls. And the poor guy just must have got so frustrated. But it happened more than once. There was a couple of occasions when Bob had to just shut the set down because we were just lit up. I mean, but like I say, you know, and I told Bobby Hart this. I wrote this in the foreword of his book. I said, he was telling the story when we first went in the recording studio, the four of us, and could get nothing done because we were bouncing off the walls. So they started having us in one at a time. And I said in the foreword, I said, they had encouraged us to do this. So they created this kind of monster that fortunately they were able to keep the lid on enough to get a show done. But there were times when it got crazy.
Yes, right here. What was your favorite episode?
Well, like I was saying before, I don't remember them as episodes. It was continuous. So I can't, I remember people. And I remember some scenes a little bit. But it happened so fast and it was so intense, and 8-10 hours a day. We'd start on a Monday, starting an episode, and you don't film the episodes in order. You know, you don't film the show in order. You film the scenes wherever they happen to be, and they edit it together later. And we'd start on a Monday, finish on Wednesday night, start the next episode Thursday morning, and go Thursday, Friday, Monday, and then start the next episode on the Tuesday and go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Monday, and it went around like that until you get a few days off as a hiatus. And so I just remember it as a revolving door of other people and costume changes.
Lots of people. Yes, the gentleman in the dark shirt.
Hi, my daughter Zoe is your biggest fan, and she's sick. She was hoping to give you a drawing
She has a drawing for you, and maybe Andrew can retrieve it. That's quite a... That. How long have you been a Monkees fan? How long have you been a Monkees fan?
For a long time.
Thank you, darling. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Andrew, was I pretty accurate about the way that Bob, put that together? I think you were the one that told me there was some folk music show he was trying to get off the ground.
Well, definitely. He had toured as a musician in the 50s and had always thought this was a great premise for a show, but until A Hard Day's Night happened, there was no bankability. When he met Bert Schneider, who is really a huge part of this show, huge part of what you see on the screen, despite him being a little bit more behind the scenes, he's the reason why the Monkees made it to the air, because his father ran Columbia Pictures, and he had a shoe-in to get a show.
That's cool there.
Yeah, exactly. But he believed in Bob, and he certainly believed in you guys. And I remember, sadly, Bert has passed away, but the last conversation I had with Bert was about an event here where they showed Head, and both Davey and Peter were here, and you were here on screen. And Bert couldn't make it, but he said, I want everybody to know something. I'm a big Monkees fan. So he really believed in it, and Bob, too, is very nostalgic about the show. This is one of the
And Jackie Cooper, too, must have been a big supporter.
Very much so, and he'd been a child actor. You know, he kind of understood that this was a thing on the leading edge of television, and you guys broke ground and were perfect for that period.
Great. Yes, I see a gentleman right here.
I would actually like to listen to the past technical aspects on Blu-ray
Yeah, that was tough. That was one of the ones, and it's funny, Andrew, Micky, and I were just talking about this before the screening, about the restoration, and Going Down is the specific one that we pointed out because of the dark background. It did not look as good as you see when we've got the film elements, right, Andrew?
Yeah, initially when we looked at it, we were kind of shocked because you saw all this stuff that you never saw even on the old DVDs or obviously television transfers. We worked off 35mm negatives and interpositives for the entire series, all 58 episodes. We found original film elements, many of which we had never touched before in the 20-plus years that Rhino's owned it.
We have to give credit to Dan Wingate for really digging in. He was a producer on this box as well. He's the one that found a lot of the stuff in the Sony vaults.
Yes, he went through one day in handwritten journals and found camera tapes for the 33 1/3 television special, so there's outtakes from that. We have outtakes from the movie Head. We have extended screen tests. It's an insane assemblage of Monkee archival material. But the main thing is that each episode was scanned in at 4K resolution, each negative or interpositive, and the original mag tracks were all restored from the first generation elements.
Yeah, and it's right up there on the screen. You can't argue with it.
And this guy over here on the end, John Hughes, is the person who convinced Rhino, after owning this thing for more than 20 years, to finally invest in preserving these 58 episodes for all of us to see in perfect quality.
You can thank me by buying it, please.
We also have to thank Grover Crisp of Sony Pictures, who put up the other half of the money. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, the biggest investment in the Monkees since 1968, since they made Head.
Yeah.
So it is an incredible feat that this restoration even took place.
There were points when Andrew and I were sitting in the editing bay going over these negatives, and we just kind of looked at each other and went, geez, can you believe we pulled this off?
Yeah, the first episode we saw was the Monkees in Paris, which we picked because it had always been the worst looking episode in all of the reruns, and they found the original films.
We almost cried. I cried.
There you go.
Yes, since I see you, but you next, but you first. A picture maybe we'll do in a little bit. We'll get some more questions. Yes, I see the woman in the back. Yes, stand.
First off, love Andrew's documentary on Voice and Heart, and Illeana, you in Grace of My Heart, directed by Allison Andrews.
Thank you.
Ask what was the difference? Saw you in 1967 at the Hollywood Bowl. You did your James Brown impression. Jumped in the fountain. What was the transition like for you from going from a television show to actually being a performing band on the road?
Well, it was interesting, and we'd all been in bands, not the same band. Like I mentioned before, I'd done, I had a cover band, so I played, and I'd gone on the road and traveled around. Nothing could prepare any of us for what happened when we first hit the stage together. But we'd all played, and we'd all been on stage, and we'd all... And we were preparing for it. We'd started rehearsing. We had David Winters come and start choreographing a show. I was taking drum lessons frantically, and
didn't they take you to see the Beatles at Dodger Stadium like 50 years ago?
Yes, we saw the Beatles at Dodger Stadium, and so we were gearing up for it, and we knew from the get-go that like I said before, they obviously had in mind they wanted us to tour. They wouldn't have bothered to hire guys that could sing or play. They just wouldn't have bothered. And we started rehearsing all the time in between scenes on a sound stage. Started rehearsing, and then as it got closer to touring, weekends and any available opportunity. But again, nothing could prepare us for that first night in Hawaii. It was in Honolulu. Especially, the thing that I remember, besides the screams and the flash bulbs, is I couldn't hear anything. And so I had to play by touch, and I actually learned how to hit my leg and the snare at the same time. So I couldn't even hear my snare. So I still play that way today. I hit my leg and the snare at the same time. It keeps me in tempo. It was crazy, yeah. I mean, it was pretty insane.
Yes, over there in the corner.
Hi. First of all, I want to say maybe, you probably helped a lot of kids get through school and make great grades because we couldn't watch you unless we did our homework and had our
Unless they did their homework, she couldn't watch the Monkees. She's saying, yes.
Which is kind of crazy because then our parents would sit down and watch too. But then also I wanted to ask you, right now, on a lot of TV shows that are popular like the Monkees, you have guest artists who vie to be on the show. How did you choose the guest artists that were on your shows, and who were some of your favorite guest artists?
You mean the actors?
The actors.
Well, that didn't have anything to do with us. That was the producers and director and the casting people.
But you picked Tim Buckley.
Oh, you mean the musical acts?
Yeah.
Oh, that, yes. I was a fan of Tim Buckley. And when we decided we were going to have those, each of us were going to choose a guest artist, we were given, full reign. It was just, who do you want? And I picked Tim Buckley because I was a fan. Mike picked Frank Zappa. David had Charlie Smalls, who wrote The Wiz. But
I think Peter supposedly wanted Pete Seeger, but they wouldn't let him have Pete Seeger. I think Peter would still like to have Pete Seeger. He still loves Pete Seeger and carried Pete Seeger's autograph in his wallet for decades because he's such a big fan.
Yes, right there, sir.
You mentioned Paul Mazursky. Was he just a writer, or did he do anything else?
Paul Mazursky, I believe, and Gerald Gardner, Larry Tucker wrote the pilot episode. And he was in it. Both of them are in it. If you look closely, they're the man on the street interview. That's Paul Mazursky. Yeah. And then Gerald Gardner and Dee Caruso, I believe, also.
Yes, a girl in the red shirt.
How does this new album come together, and what is your favorite song? It seems like you guys are having a lot of fun on this album.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, I'm so proud of this album, Good Times, if you haven't had a chance. And before I answer your question, I should probably have John answer most of that. This gentleman here and Andrew Sandoval and a guy named Mark Pincus at Rhino, and then Adam Schlesinger, they're the ones that put this together, especially these guys right here. So John, Andrew here, a lot of credit for putting this together. But a couple of years ago, we started talking about the 50th anniversary and what we could do, touring, a new album, some TV, something, whatever. And simultaneously, there was a regime change at Rhino, and the new regime, John and Mark, turned out to be much more positive about their fans, and much more positive about the Monkees. I believe also around that time is the company decided to produce some more original material, as having been a catalog company for many years. They wanted to do new material, and here's the Monkees' 50th anniversary. And then simultaneously, Andrew found some tracks in the vaults, unfinished stuff, like Love to Love on the album, and Good Times, written by my friend Harry Nielsen. And there were multiple track recordings, so they were clearly intended to be released, but show went off the air, no more albums, and they sat there for all these years, and I heard that. So when Andrew got those unreleased tracks, demo kind of stuff, we listened down once and I heard Good Times. My friend Harry, and I became very good friends with Harry over the years. And I realized I'd be able to sing a duet with my friend Harry Nielsen, and I think that kind of fired everybody up. And then having the track with Davey on it, and then having a Boyce and Hart tune and a Carole King tune that Peter did. And everybody got very excited about that. And I claim credit for suggesting the album be called Good Times. And then John reached out to this guy called Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne, who I'd heard of course, because I remember Tom Hanks bumped into him at a party once. He said, "I made a movie about you." And I said, "Oh yeah, I saw that movie." So Adam, of course, did, and Fountains of Wayne did That Thing You Do, the song. So it seemed like a perfect marriage, and Adam met him, and he loved the idea. And then they started reaching out to these writers like Ben Gibbard and Rivers Cuomo and Noel Gallagher and Paul Weller and Andy Partridge, and they all are just fallen over them. We had so much material submitted, and so it just all like came together. Again, we call it lightning in a bottle. Why don't you expound on that whole thing?
Sure. I think a lot of people think that we thought of Adam because of That Thing You Do, but actually, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Fountains of Wayne, but there's a song, okay, great. You don't know what I'm talking about. There's a song in Utopia Parkway called It Must Be Summer, and every time I hear that song, I think, God, that's a Monkees song. It's such a Monkees song. And so the original idea in my head was, Andrew is going to pull these old masters, we'll finish them off, and maybe we'll do some covers. And that was one of the ones I thought, we'll do a cover of It Must Be Summer. That'll be cool to hear Micky singing that. And then I just kind of went to the next step in my head. Well, why don't we just get Adam Schlesinger to help us produce this album, and let's get some new songs. And we kind of dipped our toe in the water with Rivers Cuomo's management, and we got this great song like 2 days after we asked, because the quote from the manager was, "Oh, Rivers loves writing to instruction." So, okay, great. And then I think the response after that, once we had a name attached to it, 2 names, we started getting more stuff, and then we started getting blind submissions, and I think we were all stunned with Ben's song, Mia Magdalena. Yeah, I mean, you listen to that the first time, and you're just like, wow. And one thing that I love, but simultaneously annoys the crap out of me, is when people hear that song and they go, God, that's really good. It's the Monkees? I'm like, yeah, it's the Monkees. So it came together really well. We couldn't be prouder. Micky has a plane.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to go catch a plane. Yeah, sure.
Ladies and
Thank you
gentlemen,
very much,
Micky
everybody.
Dolenz,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Andrew Sandoval, John Hughes, thank you very much.
The writer.